Hey, I'm Sean and welcome back to the channel. Now in today's video, I'll be discussing the top 10 excellent takeaways from the book Resurrecting Your Gains by YouTuber Jeffrey Verity Schofield. Now Jeff stands out as one of those few fresh voices on YouTube, and his book aims to help trainees systematically and methodically unfuck their training and nutrition programs. So let's dive into the 10 things I learned to put you back on the path to progress and resurrect your gains. Now there's a really common saying that 70% of life and success is just showing up, but that's just not true of the gym. That false sense of confidence and competence you get from the easy gains when you first start training can lead to years of wheel spinning and dead ends down the track. You can literally show up for years and not make any progress from one to the next. So the first step to resurrecting your gains is to identify your blind spots and eliminate them. And according to Jeff, if you think you don't have blind spots, you probably have even more than the average person. You need to view your training holistically, looking at overall trends rather than individual sessions. Because everybody responds a little bit differently and you're constantly an evolving system, you're always going to have to change things up as you progress. There will never come a day when you have it all totally figured out. And really, that's a good thing because it means that there are always new opportunities to learn, evolve, and grow in order to keep making those gains. So in short, to get a big body, you're gonna need a big brain. Number 2 is avoiding dumb shit is as crucial as making good choices. So what many people do when they hit a wall in their training is to back away and run at it again. Mistakes are an inevitable part of the process, but the key to minimizing the really detrimental ones is to accept that they're part of the process, learn from them, and avoid repeating them. This, of course, requires good data along with a measure of self-awareness to make better decisions. Now, a beginner's program is typically more structured since they aren't yet confident in making decisions on the fly. But advanced athletes, on the other hand, can make dozens, if not hundreds of decisions throughout their workouts. So ultimately, your goal is to look back on your training and be able to confidently say that you made mostly good decisions while minimizing the dumb ones. Number 3, Jeff talks about logbooks. Now, it's said that what gets measured gets managed, and if you don't know where you've been, it's hard to know where you want to go. Your logbook is your pen light in the dark cave of training and your guide to good decision making. Now this is something so obvious and so often repeated, but I guarantee you that most people aren't even bothering to record their basic sets and reps. And they have zero clue to what they did 6 weeks, 6 months, let alone 6 years ago. Your logbook is arguably your most essential piece of equipment because it's your only way of figuring out what's working, what's not, and more crucially, what to do next. You constantly see people obsessing over shit like biomechanics, supplements, or the latest high-intensity techniques, but they're not even tracking their progress enough to make decent, data-informed decisions. And your training log isn't just for a dopamine hit when you jot down your workout. You need to actually look at it from time to time. Think about all the dumb stuff that you've done in the past. So when things weren't going well, what were you doing? And when things are going well, what were you doing? Success leaves clues, and so does failure. It's all information, and individual data is perhaps the most valuable commodity in your training journey. If you're not tracking this data and other important milestones, then you are truly lost in the training wilderness. So get your shit together and start using a logbook. Now Jeff makes the point that it's important to understand that the factors that contribute to muscle growth are typically multiplicative, not additive. Now this means that it's not just the sum of your diet, training, sleep, consistency and effort that determines your results, but rather their combined effect. If you fail to optimize any one of these factors, it's effectively multiplying the other variables by 0 and screwing your results. So for example, if you've perfected your training, your diet, your consistency and effort, getting insufficient sleep could be the one thing that's holding you back. Now granted, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and there's a lot of different methods and techniques out there that can work for muscle growth. For example, you can do low volume programs or power building style workouts. You can use machines only or try keto or intermittent fasting. There's no one size fits all approach. But none of this counts if you've neglected the essential factors in the importance hierarchy that actually matter. Jeff makes some great points about the forever debated topic of bulking and cutting. Most people ping pong backwards and forwards between the goals whenever the going gets tough. Whether you choose to bulk or cut Jeff recommends committing to one, staying the course, and exercising some patience in the process. Now for bulking, he typically recommends spending 70 to 80% of your time in a surplus or bulk state. Quality size gains don't come easy, so forget this bullshit main gaining stuff. You need to attack muscle growth and give yourself the best chance of growing. Then you shift gears and clean things up later. Accept that there's gonna be some fat gain on a bulk and maximize the time gaining muscle in a surplus. Fat loss is much easier and faster compared to gaining muscle anyway, so you might as well optimize muscle growth during one phase, then focus on optimizing fat loss during a separate phase. Doing a 2-month aggressive cut is better than some wishy-washy 4 to 5 month drawn-out affair where you're just wasting your time. Aim for 20 to 30% in a deficit for a good target. A slow cut bleeds much worse than a fast one. What drains most people isn't always the actual deficit. It's the fact that they're in diet mode and psychologically restricting themselves. They feel the negative effects of dieting because of the expectation effect of feeling shit on a diet. So it becomes its own self-fulfilling prophecy. Many people who try dieting, ironically, aren't even tracking accurately and are only at maintenance. So Jeff's advice is to be strict, cut aggressively and quickly as possible without losing muscle or your sanity, and get back to the bodybuilding part of the equation as soon as you can. Now, so many people stagnate because they spend way too much time obsessing over their diets. Stop agonizing over the perfect meal plan, the perfect food combinations or macro splits. They don't exist and it's a recipe for failure. You're better off learning the principles of what makes a good diet rather than just blindly clinging to some hyper-optimized plan. A lot of the time it's this search for optimization that leads to a path of confusion, inaction, and ultimately failure. I personally see this all the time with carnivore. People tinkering with the minutiae and overanalyzing the trivia and messing it up because they tie their minds into knots, thinking and obsessing about dumb stuff that just doesn't matter. Eat reasonably, and that'll get you to the vast majority of where you want to go. And when it comes to programming, just as there's no magic foods or magic exercises, there's also no magic programs. Programming is just the way in which you organize your training. So stop searching for this mythical, utopic El Dorado of training optimization. It just doesn't exist. Jeff simply recommends to avoid having a bad program. At a minimum, keep a training log. Have a rough plan of attack and try to find which styles of progression work best for each exercise and rep range. Now, one of the great joys of training is the individualized human guinea pig self-experiment of figuring out how all the pieces fit together. It's not always easy, but that's the enjoyment of it. If everyone could do it, it wouldn't have any value. Now, I really like Jeff's recommendations on progression, and we usually think that progression means adding weight or reps to the set. But he makes the little mentioned point that you can also progress in effort, or for the pedantic, regress in effort. So what does that mean? Well, if you did a set of 5 at 100 kilos last week and that nearly killed you, then this week it was merely tough, then the weekend after that it's super easy, that's progression. Even if on paper the sets, the reps, and the weights are exactly the same. I also really like his little mentioned point about specialization phases. For those of us who are more advanced, many still train with this erroneous belief of trying to bring up all the muscle groups equally. Now, it's quite possible that you won't be able to bring up all of the muscle groups at the same time. So when you try improving everything, you really end up improving nothing. You might have to specialize in specific areas. Jeff recommends doing this by having phases where you include higher volumes, different exercise selections, activation movements, and to really target a particular area with perhaps more volume. Now, these specialization phases might last a few months, setting everything else back at maintenance and really trying to focus on maybe 2 or 3 areas at the most. I really enjoyed how Jeff dived into the recent evidence-based claims surrounding volume and progress, particularly all this nonsense about how volume is the main driver of progress. In reality, Jeff states, progress is the main driver of progress. Now, for most of us, strength and size are correlated, so it's a good idea to set goals to get stronger on the main movements. Now, if you have the option to add more sets or go up in weight, usually adding more weight is the way to go. Now that's not totally discounting volume, as it sometimes can be the key to progressing in load, but other times it could be the single worst thing you can do. There's a definite dose response of hypertrophy in a U-shaped curve. Going from 1 set to 2 sets might get you more muscle growth, and then the same goes from 2 sets to 3. However, there will come a point where you just can't recover from more volume, and doing any extra sets will actually get you less growth. There's an often neglected reality that anyone can build up to 80 to 90% of their muscle on a relatively low volume program. It might take a little bit longer and require more intensity, but it's definitely achievable. Most people fail to see results from this approach because they make up for the lack of effort with extra sets. Focus on progress, not just volume, and you'll see better results in your quest for gains. Now, one of the most debated chicken versus egg questions is whether progressive overload is the cause of growth or the result of it. In simple terms, does adding weight to the bar trigger muscle growth? Or is the ability to add weight a result of having gained muscle? Training isn't supposed to be easy, but if you find yourself changing your technique, relying on stimulants, and feeling progressively more fatigued throughout your training cycle, you might be attempting to lift more weight than your body can handle. It's important to push yourself to the limit while also avoiding injury and unnecessary fatigue. I love the comparison between the helicopter game that Jeff uses in the book. You can achieve progress by flying from the bottom of the tunnel right up to the top, deloading back to the bottom, and then simply repeating. However, simply flying in the middle for most of the time can produce similar results. You can regulate your training based on the level of stress that you want to achieve. A lot of trainees suffer from overload anxiety where they can't add weight every session. Understand that gradual overload over time is more important than adding weight every session. And this can help reassure you that you're on the right track. Now, I believe that the hallmark of any good educator is the ability to take complexity and simplify it for the average person. And Jeff exceeds my expectations in producing a truly valuable work that sits heads and shoulders above the large amount of very mediocre training books and guides out there. Normally, if I can just take away one thing from a book, I consider it a win for my time and money invested. Resurrecting Your Gains is packed with similar gems, and I could have discussed even more actionable takeaways that you could apply immediately to your own training. What I really love about purchasing the book is that Jeff has also included an audio track so that others can digest the information in a different way for those that don't like or don't have the time to read. Now, what I'll do for the next video is get Jeff on the channel to expand on a few more points, and if you have any questions for Jeff, please leave them in the comments below. In the meantime, please support Jeff's work and hit him up with his socials and YouTube. And if you're looking for some accountability along with an experienced guide to steer you through the insane amounts of bullshit out there, please hit me up with the links in the description below. Thanks for watching.